Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So episode 4 of the Wheel of Time has dropped, and I'm sure we now have all kind of caught our breath. And now what I want to do is go over my top 5 moments within this episode, and I'm going to start off with my favourite moment, and that was of course the ending with Nynaeve. This whole sequence was absolutely crazy to me. The fact they've changed things to kind of make it exciting and shocking for us all, I thought was a really nice touch. And just in general, how everything played out just prior to that particular moment that I'm speaking about, where Nynaeve channels for the first time to basically heal everyone in the cave with Logain after he had kind of basically killed them with his channeling of the one power. It was mad, absolutely crazy. So to begin with, we have to kind of go back a little bit in this kind of scene because it's quite a long sequence. So to begin with, we see obviously Logain lose the shield on him, or I should say he breaks free of the shield and manages to kind of knock out both Karine and Liandrin. And then we have that really cool conversation that he has with Moiraine, where they talk to one another, and it's kind of seems like, to begin with, you think Moiraine is there to just have a general chat, but I think she was biding her time to make sure her fellow sisters kind of regain consciousness, and so they could all attack Logain at once. So that was kind of cool to see play out, and I think she kind of played Logain as a fool there. But of course, the consequences and aftermath of all of that is Karine bites the dust as she goes to protect her fellow sisters. She kind of gets a weave of some sort of solid object, kind of like a dagger, through her chest. And then that, of course, becomes known to her warder, who I thought really portrayed just what happens to warders in those scenes fantastically. His reactions, his facial expressions, and just kind of there's like a moment of deadness across his face was really nice to see. Then we obviously going to skip a bit forward to talk about the main portion of this. And this is where it gets really crazy. So we see after that's happened, Moiraine and Liandrin are basically the only two Aes Sedai there now who can kind of shield Logain, but they're not necessarily holding him completely fully down. He's very much now fighting back against them because they don't really have the strength in the one power to challenge him, from what it looks like, especially after Liandrin got knocked unconscious for a moment. And so then there's that. And then Karine's warder comes in and sees her dead on the floor, and then he, as you would expect naturally, of the effects of having felt his Sedai die, he goes into absolute frenzy, charges towards Logain with both his axes, tries to slam him down and kill him. And then that's when this scene absolutely goes mad. Logain blocks the attack, and then we start to see the weaves he's starting to use with the taint crawling up it go into the kind of axes, and they break into shards. And then as a consequence of that, the shards scatter all across the room in the directions of all the warders and Aes Sedai. And that was absolutely shocking to see. Every single one of them gets injured, and it looks to me, literally all of them, Moiraine, Lan, Liandrin, but Moiraine and Lan in particular, they look like they have mortal wounds at that moment. And that was a complete shock. I think None of us expected anything like that. And then to see kind of Lan with his throat slit open, and then the blood pouring out of his wound on his throat was absolutely crazy to see. And I think that hit us all completely out of the left field. None of us was expecting anything like that. And for a moment, a brief moment in that sequence, I kind of forgot what Nynaeve can do. And I thought, oh my god, are they actually going to kill Lan off this early in the series? I completely lost it. And then, yeah, kind of plot armor-wise, Nynaeve's the only one that doesn't get hit with any of the objects. I think what could have been a little bit cooler maybe was she gets a little bit of a kind of scrape on her shoulder or whatever to kind of make it so she's not the only one that didn't get hit with this. But then, yeah, she kind of surveys the scene, and then who does she go towards straight away to help? None other than Lan himself. I think throughout this whole entire kind of episode 3 and 4, we've seen their relationship grow, and I think just their mutual feelings for one another kind of start to get exaggerated. And I think we've gotten an acceleration to some degree of that for this moment, for this playoff, which was crazy. She goes to his knees. She's in despair, seeing the blood spewing out of Lan's throat, and you know, they don't hold back. This is so kind of realistic with what would happen to blood. And then you can see she's starting to get angry, and then Logain looks like he's about to start channeling, but then we get the absolute most amazing moment from the entire series to date, where she basically screams out, "No!" And then she finally breaks through that barrier that we know she has from the books, where it kind of stops it from channeling. And she just, you know, unleashes all of her power in a somewhat kind of frenzy for the first time, and she absolutely heals every single person in the room. And then, yeah, we get that playoff, then all the Aes Sedai kind of link together, and then they gentle Logain right there on the spot. They didn't take a moment's hesitation in that. And it was definitely the right thing to do. And that was a next thing about this scene, which was absolutely spectacularly shot, but also kind of in terms of the CGI, how they went about showcasing that to us all. To see the taint covering the one power, kind of seeping and pouring out from Logain, to obviously show us as viewers they've completely started to gentle him and he's losing the ability to channel, I think was really a good representation of what a gentling parts would look like. And I think they really hit it out the ballpark. And then even Alvaro Morte in that moment as well, he absolutely smashed it out the park, because he burst into tears because he's basically dead now, as we already know. When anybody, male or female, loses the ability to channel the one power, they just feel dead inside. It was like the most amazing sequence of events thus far in the Wheel of Time, and that just absolutely wrecked me to pieces. Like I said in my tweet last night, I was basically crying for like 5 minutes straight after that scene. But I think that was because of other things that have been happening, recently with myself. And so I think it was a good therapeutic moment for me personally. So yeah, that was really nice to have that moment as well. So thank you to both actors and to the director and writer from this episode. That was much needed. Right, I've spent a hell of a lot of time on that. I think it's a good 10 minutes. Let's move on to the next 4 moments that I absolutely loved in this episode. So, up next, we have the moment we finally start to see the corruption or the taint from Shadar Logoth start to manifest itself in Mat. And this is obviously during the sequence where we see him with Rand and Thom in the farmhouse, and he's kind of started to throw up, and then you see I'm guessing it's Mashadar's gotten into his body through the dagger, of course, and it's making him ill. And then obviously we're going to get a mental side effect of that in the coming episodes as well. He's going to become more suspicious of everyone, even those he's known his entire life, like Rand, for example. But then, what I actually really loved about that scene, though, was the moments after that. And I think with the changes we've seen with Matt's character, or more than his backstory, I think we're starting to see even more moments where it plays out, and we get an understanding of why these changes were made, and they're, having impactful moments in subsequent episodes. We had one in this episode. We had one in episode 3 with Thom for the first time when he was with the IEU.
This is the last time I'll ask you. What are you doing here?
Need money to get home. Thought you might have some.
And dealing with hardships and needing kind of the cash or the money to be able to get back to his sisters. And I think this moment further solidifies how right Rafe was and the writers were to kind of introduce that backstory. I think it adds an extra layer to Matt without taking anything away. He's still got that kind of flamboyant, jokerish Matt that we all know, but with this added layer of kind of having the love and care for his sisters because his parents are basically waste of spaces, I think really added an extra layer of intrigueness with his character. And I think that will then play out for the casual fans as well, and I think that's a really just nice change that they've done with Matt's character that I'm fully on board with. And just seeing the way he interacts with that young girl, very much as if it was his own sisters, and I think it was just very endearing how he was with her. So that was really cool, and one of my favourite scenes in the episode, of course. Up next, we have the beginning of the episode where we see the Battle of Ghealdan and Logain having a sort of duel, although it's not really much of a duel, with the King of Ghealdan.
They forget the dragon is just as likely to save the world as break it.
I think that whole sequence was really cool, and it was one I was quite certain we would get to begin with in this episode. But that whole thing was really cool. We saw a little bit of Logain finally in action and what he can do with the one power. But the moment I want to particularly hone in on was the moment when he's starting to have a conversation with the King of Ghealdan, but then we get the big playoff, that big moment we've been waiting to see with the male channeler, especially in particular. And it's quite interesting how much it differs from, say, that first young guy we saw in episode 1, where he had a physical representation of a person with him alongside. Whereas this time Logain has what looks to be the corruption of the taint kind of being showcased as the madness that descends on any male channeler, which was interesting, and it's made me kind of think, is something different at play there? Was it really the craziness, and was it perhaps a more sinister thing that's going on? And it could be the fact that somehow, and this is a little bit of a stretch because I know it's not anything to do with the books, but perhaps those were actual moments where we see Forsaken for the first time, although albeit not in a kind of physical form. They're not actually there. I think that's a stretch, but that was something that crossed my mind. But I just loved the way Alvaro Morte kind of acted out these scenes as Logain, saying how the Aes Sedai should be following him and they shouldn't be scared of him. And then when we start to see him talk to those voices in his head, just the way he does that, it's it was really well thought out and acted. It's just slight turns of their heads and talking to kind of thin air for the rest of the world to see, but of course he's seeing something there But of course we know he can see something there, and that was just really cool to see. But also how he kind of feels about himself in these moments. He feels and believes fully that he's the dragon reborn. And so he kind of starts to kind of become this kind of messiah figure where he wants to gather all the peoples from across the world to his cause, and how he wants to be the dragon that binds the world together, not be the dragon that kind of breaks the world like has happened in the past, which I thought was really cool. And it just gives us an extra insight into Logain's thought process and what he's feeling in these moments, because obviously he's got this incredible power that he's finally gotten a hold of, and as we find out later in the episode, he has all the voices that are teaching him how to weave and to channel and to create all these weaves that we see him use to kind of block the dagger and turn it back towards the King of Ghealdan. But obviously he shows mercy because his whole point of view is he wants to be the dragon that brings the entire world together. And so he shows mercy on the king to show he's not someone that's that far gone. He even heals the king's wound to kind of showcase he can be someone to be trusted. But just the whole process of how these scenes planned out and played out, I thought were really well written for this episode. And I thought that of every single scene that we got. But yeah, he even, comments on the fact he doesn't care about a crown. He goes, "What's a crown to the dragon reborn?" Which I thought was a really interesting line, just to kind of go into his mindset as well a little bit further. But yeah, just the way as well, these two manifestations of the madness that a male channeler gets, I thought was really interestingly done, which is why I kind of thought maybe along the lines of it might be a Forsaken and not just a manifestation of the madness. I'm probably right off the mark there, but it's something I thought about and that I'm going to keep in the back of my mind in case I end up being right. And now we get to the final two, and we're going to now talk about the sequence between Thom and Rand.
And you and another lad the same way. Owyn, my nephew.
And this is, of course, when Thom mentions his nephew Owyn and how he had channeled and what had happened to him. And this was a real lovely scene that they've taken straight from the books, but slightly adapted it a little bit differently for the show. Because what they've done, they've kept the heart and soul of those scenes and what, Thom talks about in the books, as close as they can. But they've changed a slight, portion of that now, where we've gotten the fact Thom believes it's Matt for certain reasons that I think have been introduced into the show, because it adds an extra layer of confusion for the casual fan. And so we've got in all these moments between like Nynaeve, Matt, where you can see they might be the Dragon Reborn, or she might be the Dragon Reborn because of what they've done and just how things happen around how things happen around each of them. But seeing Thom talk about Owyn on screen was really cool, because that's something I've always loved in the books, and I think it gives an insight to the audience to maybe understand why on earth a random stranger, a gleeman at that, would kind of put down his life for the time being to make sure these two strangers, these two boys, are safe out in the world. Because he doesn't have to do that, but because he's seen these sorts of events and he overheard Dana say what she said to them, that makes him change his mind and go off with them. And I think this kind of solidifies in Rand's mind, this man is a good person and one that can be trusted. But yeah, I have to say, literally every single scene where we have moments of dialogue and it gets a bit, deeper into the lore and into certain aspects from the books, played out absolutely beautifully on this episode. I cannot fault a single scene. This for me was like a 10 out of 10 so far. Whereas the others, I have plenty of gripes and issues that I have with what they did and the pacing. This one, I have nothing. No faults, no nothing. I am absolutely mind blown by what they did in this episode. and nothing felt out of place. It felt like it had a seamless, motion throughout the episode, and that whole hour and 1 minute flew by. I wanted another hour. Anyway, let's move on to the final moment, the fifth moment that I absolutely loved. And this is where Perrin is with the Tuathon, and he's now talking to Ila.
We're not running. There's only one way to end violence. Everybody, everywhere has to stop.
And she explains why she chose to be a member of the Way of the Leaf, and what it is that she's trying to achieve by kind of spreading the word and trying to change every person's viewpoint on violence. And I thought that plays off really nicely in tandem with Perrin's kind of character arc and what he's going through at that present moment, because after episode 1 and him killing his own wife by accident, he's obviously got a lot of thoughts and feelings on picking up the axe, and that's something we've seen throughout the entirety of the series of books that he has to kind of battle and deal with on a day-to-day, book-by-book, weekly basis. And so to see that kind of start to be playing out in this show was really nice, and I think it just played off really nicely from both of where they were coming from. Even that last set of moments from this scene where she goes, I want to make sure the next time my daughter is brought back into the world by the pattern, she'll be able to live her life that she didn't have with me in this age. And I think that really hit a chord with Perrin, and it did myself, because I thought they both would understand where each other are coming from in these moments. So that was really cool, and I think these are so kind of sowing the seeds for later plot points and later character introductions that will have an effect on Perrin and just his viewpoint on picking up the axe or the hammer. So that was really cool to see. But yeah, I could literally have named every single scene and gone over scene by scene, but those were my 5 most favourite moments from episode 4. But what about you guys? Did you have a favourite set of top 5 moments from episode 4? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, we have made it to the end of the video. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like on the video. And of course, if you have any comments, leave them in the comments section. Right guys, I will catch you all in another video later today.